We are thrilled that all of you could make it today. This conversation is sure to inspire. Earlier this year, the Campaign for Grade Level Reading launched the What's Working XChange census to gauge what's working, where, how well, and under what conditions, specifically in the areas of digital connectivity and cultivating learning-rich environments. Today, we are very excited to build off of the results of that census by inviting a team of community leaders to provide a voice behind what they shared and host a set of 3 conversations to take the next step in engagement about what's working. Sierra, if you could go to the next slide, I'm thrilled to introduce how this session is going to work. We will be setting the stage here for a few moments with some opening remarks, and then we will have some breakout room conversations where you will be able to select which conversation you would like to join. Room 1 will be digital connectivity and campaign communities. Room 2, everyday places and spaces, cultivating learning-rich environments. And room 3 will be the school attendance in kindergarten conversation with attendance works. And then we will pull everyone back together for some key reflections. Next slide, please. So joining us today, our field experts are community leaders in each of these areas. So within room 1, we have leaders from Sarasota, Florida with the Patterson Foundation, Juan with the Miami Foundation, Sherry also with the Patterson Foundation, Liz and Jill with Grinnell College, and I will also be joining that room. Next slide, please. Everyday Places and Spaces is an initiative that we support with the Campaign for Grade Level Reading. So we have a large panel for this group. We have Liz from Vero Beach with the Learning Alliance, Kate and Cheryl with United Way of Central Iowa in Des Moines, Andy from Winchester, Virginia, Kate Knudsen from Omaha, Liza from Fort Lauderdale from Broward County, Siobhan will be leading that group, and Rachel Stein from Book Harvest in Durham, North Carolina. Next slide, please. And this is our last group, the Attendance in Kindergarten group, which will be led by our amazing partnership that we have with Attendance Works. In that group, Cecilia and Anika will lead the conversation, and joining that team will be Rosie and Melissa from Patterson, New Jersey, Dawn and Caitlin from Avondale, Phoenix, Arizona. Next slide, please. Providing opening remarks today will be leaders from our GLR team and our partnerships. We will have Ralph Smith, who is our managing director, Hetty Chang from Attendance Works, and Siobhan, who will be leading also from Campaign for Grade Level Reading. So we do recognize that digital connectivity, learning-rich environments, and attendance is mission critical to addressing learning loss recovery. And so it is with this moment in time that we will be focusing on these conversations today. And before we hear from Ralph, who will open the session, we would like to share a video that will ground all of us and bring us together around the shared work within the Campaign for Grade Level Reading. So Sierra, if you could play the video, that would be great. Thank you.
As a group, they worked on changing the culture of their community around the value of education.
We need families in this with us hip by hip, because none of us can do it by ourselves, and nobody loves their children more than a parent. And I think what we've got to do is to reach out, find out what they need, and then figure out a way to meet those needs so that all children can learn.
couldn't be more excited about this group coming together. I think the alignment in priorities and strategies with where we're trying to go is extraordinarily tight, and this group coming together to lead this effort, I think has huge implications for the country.
Last year alone, over 250,000 elementary school students missed more than 10% of the school year. And the effect on public safety and the economy is stark.
As many as 2 million kids across the country lack the glasses they need to see the board, participate in class, or succeed in life.
Well, I learned a lot from looking at the pictures and sounding out the words. I mean, I learned immensely!
The notion now that, and the evidence now, that getting kids able to read at 3rd grade is now not only a report that we can read and study and talk about, it's actually a call to action.
That's fantastic. Thank you. At this time now, I think we should all have some warm feelings about what we're going to talk about. And it is my pleasure to introduce Ralph Smith, our Managing Director. Take it away, Ralph.
Thank you. Thank you, Malai. I am delighted to have a chance to join you today. And I will confess that I'm hearing an echo of some sort. Thank you. I will confess that when I looked at the numbers this morning, that is the number of people who registered for the session, I realized that Malai, as usual, sets high targets and always exceeds them. And I realized that spending time on a deck that outlines the civic action and advocacy agenda of the Campaign for Grade Level Reading would make almost no sense at all to half the people who registered, because people who registered were curious about specific things. So I thought that what I would do is yield a portion of my time to that video, which would set the tone and provide a bit of an introduction. And as many of you probably noticed, the video is a couple of years old because we honored the United Way in 2021. And this year we had the pleasure of recognizing public televisions across the nation, PBS and the Corporation for Public Broadcasting for their wonderful support for the campaign from the very beginning until today. And we were delighted to do that. And I ask all of you to bring a special shout out to our public television stations across the country. But even so, I'm never disappointed whenever United Way shows up, because United Way shows up. And United Way has been with us since the very beginning. But let me tell you why I'm so delighted to be here, because this session, more than any of the others, and that's a tough thing to say in a great week, represents the foundational big bet of the campaign for grade level reading. Our foundational big bet is a bet on the power of proximity. The big bet is founded on the proposition that those who are closest to the challenge are likely to be closest to the solution. And that's why our approach is to work and walk with community stakeholders who bring local knowledge, lived experience, wisdom, energy, and discretionary resources. Communities willing to set and pursue their own bold, ambitious, achievable, and actionable goals through developing community action plans and becoming places with plans. And over the past decade, we have learned with and from our network communities and our partners. 5 years ago, as the end of the first decade approached, we launched a listening tour, and we were gratified by the absence of fatigue and the willingness and actually the encouragement to us to stay the course. During the pandemic, we were awed by the many ways and means network communities employed to adapt, adjust, invent, innovate, to meet the moment and to continue making a difference. Today, as the pandemic appears in the rearview mirror, we are inspired by the resolve, the resilience, and the commitment of these communities to assure an equitable recovery. And we are reassured by the many and continuing reminders that the twin perils of complacency and cynicism have been displaced by the deep understanding and full embrace of urgent patience, the urgent patience that durable change demands. My hope is that that campaign for grade level reading, civic action, and advocacy agenda will resonate with our communities and our community partners. And that is why I am so pleased to have this opportunity to welcome you to this conversation about 3 aspects of our work that will require time, thought, attention, and collaborative action in the months and years ahead. The first of the 3, and it may be the last of the 3 given the order, is the work that you will hear us talking about as everyday attendance, which is really our chronic absence work. The chronic absence work that has been foundational to the campaign since its very beginning. We knew then what we know now. It would not matter so much whether Common Core gave us standards which undergirded powerful pedagogy, curriculum instruction, professional development, and assessment. And whether we found ways to build strong leadership that would ensure learning culture in schools. That these things, even combined, wouldn't matter so much if children continue to be chronic absent. If those children who needed school the most were getting the least because they weren't there. And so our partner from the very beginning, our implementation partner has been Attendance Works. And that work has been a consistent feature of the campaign and will continue as we go forward. And so it's really important that we look at how that work's relevance today is informing what we now have learned from our communities is a second and quite important inflection point, and that is kindergarten performance. Kids who don't do well in kindergarten and who finish toward the bottom quartile in kindergarten, they continue to do poorly. They miss the third grade reading milestone, and they are headed for pretty bad outcomes for the duration of their school careers. Second on the list is what is today's analog to chronic absence. We will talk about digital connectivity, not because it is the issue of the moment, but because it is as critical as everyday attendance. Without digital connectivity, millions of kids in rural and urban America and elsewhere are going to be locked out of what schools have to offer. And this is no longer about the homework gap. This is about compounding the existing achievement gap. And with more children stranded on a cliff on the wrong side of an even larger gap, we cannot afford not to pay real attention to digital connectivity and advocate for every child and every home and every family to be connected to the internet and to get the benefit of that connectivity. And the third issue, learning happens everywhere, and our version of everyday places and spaces is grounded on the realization that not only can schools not do it alone, schools cannot do it all. They can't do it alone, and they can't do it just with the partnerships they have. That's schools must be embedded in a teaching and learning function that's owned by the community as a whole. And when we get to the point where the entire community owns the teaching and learning function, we will know that we have finally gotten to the point where we can make a difference. And so the campaign is taking on with our communities this challenge of working to build an ecosystem for out of school learning that begins at home, with home libraries and others, that goes to the places where families take their children, and making sure that all those places are learning rich environments, and finding ways to make sure that the community assets represented by museums and farms and zoos and other aspects of the community that right now provide experiences and exposure that augment for middle class and middle income children what schools do. We have got to find ways to make sure that these institutions do what they want to do, and what they want to do is to be perceived as affordable, accessible, and welcoming to the parents in economically challenged, fragile, and marginalized families. Those three topics that you're going to discuss today are important to our continued work. They are essential aspects of our plan for civic action and advocacy, and we're looking forward to your advice, to your support, to your nudges, and to your helping us to understand better and maybe even to be more bold. My assignment has been to introduce Hetty Chang, who leads the Attendance Works organization, and there are lots of things I will say about Hetty Chang, some of which might even be true. But what I will say about Hetty is, in my 20 years at Casey, I probably had the opportunity to oversee over $1 billion in grant making. I probably had an opportunity myself to originate several $100 million of grants. The best contract, the most important grant I made in 2 decades at Casey was a contract to Hetty Chang and the grant to the organization that has become Attendance Work. This is the best and most important contribution of the Casey Foundation to the field. And so I am delighted to introduce my friend, my mentor in so many ways, my favorite data geek, and a wonderful leader, Hetty Chang.
Thank you so much, Ralph. It is such a privilege and an honor to be here and to be presenting a little bit of a quick overview of why attendance matters so much as part of this overall effort around the campaign for grade level reading. Because what we know is that it's going to take all of us working on all these different dimensions to make sure kids have the foundation they need to succeed. The reason why we wanted to make sure that kindergarten was part of this discussion is we know that kindergarten is a crucial platform for ensuring kids have the skills for long-term success. But we are seeing alarming increases in the numbers of kids who are missing so much school that they are at risk academically, at risk socially, and off track for the success we want. Kindergarten chronic absence has dramatically increased. In California, it's 40% of our kids. In Ohio, it's 30%. Wherever you are, you should take a look at what are your levels of kindergarten chronic absence. Next slide. And what we know is that kindergarten chronic absence is especially challenging for our low-income children who are more likely to face challenges to getting to school and less likely to have the resources to make up for those opportunities to learn and to engage that occur in the classroom. Go to the next slide, please. And we also know that if we want to change this, we have to deeply understand what are the reasons why kids and families might not be able to get their kids to school regularly. And the 3 years of disrupted learning that we've just experienced, the lack of access to preschool, the lack of clarity about when kids should show up to school, when they might have a symptom of illness, the fewer opportunities that parents have to get engaged in person in classrooms since the pandemic have wrought havoc with the habit and routine of everyday attendance. And we'll use our session later on to talk about what are these realities and how do we come up with solutions that respond to these new realities. Next slide. This really is about deepening our investment in the positive conditions for learning that we know are so essential to thriving students, particularly thriving kindergartners who feel connected and engaged in our schools. Next slide. This is about taking a tiered approach, click again, please, to improving attendance, keep clicking to the whole triangle. And this is something that we can think about. How do we ensure is in place in schools? Next slide. This is about our schools, our communities. This is why the local campaigns are so important, because they are positioned to advance this kind of systemic approach. Next slide. And one thing I just want to make sure people are aware of is that an easy entry to starting a systemic approach and engaging in a positive way around attendance is our attendance awareness campaign. I'm going to keep this short. You'll have the slides to look at afterwards if you want to know more. Thank you so much. And with that, I want to turn it over to Siobhan to talk about the importance of learning in everyday places, because it is about us making sure that kids are connected to a whole range of opportunities for learning and thriving.
Hi, everyone, and thank you, Hetty. And hello to everyone, and welcome to our GLR week and our session on community coalition leading organizations. and how we are responding to the ever-changing digital and learning environments and how that translates into communities responding. I'm particularly excited about our breakout session on establishing out-of-school learning, rich places and spaces in local communities and in their support of at-risk families. As you saw, Ralph in the talked about the ecosystem that we've been working on over the past 2 years. The Campaign for Grade Level Reading has been working on building a collaborative established to fuel, inspire, and accelerate the embrace of communities as learning-rich environments. The collective, representing more than 3 dozen private, public, and social sector organizations, has coalesced to pursue the potential and share the joy of transforming unusual, unexpected, and ordinary places and spaces into learning-rich environments, accessible to the children and families of economically challenged, fragile, and otherwise marginalized families. Where, how, and in what kind of environment this takes place and the resources needed to succeed have been meaningful conversations over the past couple of years in helping us think through the development of this ecosystem. The graphic helps us to focus on what we believe are the 3 arenas that naturally help support where a learning-rich environment could and should occur. In the first circle, as Ralph mentioned, all learning begins at home in an engaging, parent or family-centered, safe environment filled with learning-rich supports and materials. And you'll notice on the outside of the loop, those are the kind of materials we think about. We must understand how we connect with families to ensure their homes are learning-rich environments with the tools for success for their families. We identified the secondary places and spaces where families have to go regularly: laundromats, grocery stores, barbershops, family centers, restaurants, and various transportation modes which families use. We believe these everyday places and spaces could and should be learning-rich environments as well for children through use of signage and other means. We'll hear more about this in our session as we hear from the GLR communities that have been embracing this work. The third circle defines how cultural institutions, community amenities, libraries, houses of worship are real opportunities that communities could and should activate to engage with families to ensure that first, they're aware that these places and where these places and spaces are, and that also they are seen and felt as welcoming, accessible, and affordable. Where else are these places and spaces in your communities that provide these types of support will also be discussed in our session. We also know there are more structured out-of-school learning-rich environments where families connect to high-quality programs offering high-dosage tutoring, summer learning supports, and so forth that are pivotal to out-of-school learning-rich opportunities. In today's conversation, we'll learn from 5 communities how they have adapted everyday places and spaces into learning-rich environments that respond to and encourages a family's desire to provide every opportunity for their child to become a strong, secure, adaptive learner. Also, today we're excited to start using a piece of software known as Mentimeter for the first time to engage the audience in the discussions and provide meaningful feedback to the panelists.
Just to give some context, we are in Indian River County, Florida, a population of 165,000. We have 13 public elementary schools here, 7,000 pre-K through 5th grade students, and of those, about 67% of them are economically disadvantaged. There is a large disparity between wealthy and the people living in poverty in our county. Next slide. This is what we call our early literacy model. Basically, excellence in teaching. We do a lot of teacher professional development. We have K2 coaches on every elementary school campus. Extended learning for students. We fund interventionists during the school day, and then we have after school and summer programs. Our engaged community. In leadership, we have over 120 members. who are convened monthly around the literacy crisis. And then what we're going to talk about today really is our empowered families, which that is our 0 to 5-year-olds. So servicing families with kids from birth to 5 years old. Next. So that is called Moonshot Families. Our mantra is read, talk, play, sing, create. We actually have a jingle that hopefully I'll be able to play for you towards the end of this. Meeting families where they are is really what we are all about. We do have 2 connection centers in our underserved neighborhoods, but we serve the entire county. Next. So we really have a 3-tier approach to accessing and reaching families. And after the pandemic, we found ourselves having to really, you know, kind of build up again. The pandemic really hit us hard. So what we started to do was just here, there, everywhere, right? Kind of like Roy Kent. We're just trying to be everywhere in the community. So at large, so if you go to the next slide. Tier one really looks like large community events, not ones that we produce, but ones that we have a presence at. And that's where the community really gets to learn about Moonshot Families. We do leverage we have a rocket bus, our reading rocket bus, and we have a puppet, Moonshot. So we leverage those other assets at these events, and families learn about us initially, and then they are invited to register as a Moonshot family. And there are many benefits to being a Moonshot family. And I'll get into that in a minute. You go to the next slide, please. So this would be an example of a tier 2 interaction. So in terms of meeting people where they are, what we do with our VPK classrooms is we call it Moonshot Mondays, and we meet parents in the pickup line. So the team goes to the school. They get to meet the children learn the jingle, they meet the puppet Moonshot, and then we send home learning kits with them, actually hand them in the car to the parents as they pick up their kids, introduce ourselves. And then again, it's another opportunity for them to register to become a Moonshot family. If you are a Moonshot family, you continue to receive learning kits. You get invited to family-friendly events, both that we produce for our registered families in all the different neighborhoods, as well as other events. You get birthday messages, videos from Moonshot the Puppet every month, and then, you know, basically whatever you need. We have 2 connection specialists. They're available via text, phone, whatever. And so that's how we get deeper into serving our families. And if we go to the next slide, please. So back one, a tier three interaction might look like a play date. And this is we're talking about the importance of community partners, and through our Moonshot Community Action Network, this was a play date for parents at Healthy Start, where we're modeling interactions, you know, how to read, talk, play, sing, and create with your children. Next slide. Or it might be a family visit at one of our connection centers. This is our connection center in Fellsmere. So it's a family play date. Next slide. This is our read, talk, play, sing, create calendar that is really blanketed across the county, and it is text and emailed to our Moonshot families, but available widely. It's got read, talk, play, sing, create activities for every day of the month. Next slide. Sorry. And on the back of the calendar, it even has lyrics to songs, nursery rhymes, and a QR code that will take you to our video library of read, talk, play, sing, create activities. And this was because we found ourselves just having to rebuild. In September of 2022, we started with about 26 registered Moonshot families, and grew that to over 400, which equates to about 900 individuals, children birth through 5 years old, and parents. So it was a very effective way to launch and get the word out there that reading, talking, playing, and singing is super important. Next slide. And that's the end of it. And I had a video, I had a song to play, but I guess I don't see it on there now. I was under the impression that I was going to be sharing slides, so
I can stop sharing and you can put it up if you want.
it's no, I don't want to run. I probably already ran over time, so it's fine.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Thank you, Liz. And now Andy Gale from Literacy Volunteers at Winchester.
Hello, everybody. We can jump to that next slide. I'll go pretty quick through the basics. We're in Winchester, Virginia. So again, collaborative effort with foundations, nonprofits, for-profits, business leaders, looking to, again, improve reading by 3rd grade. The John and Janice Wyatt Foundation is working closely with Literacy Volunteers as the backbone to make this happen with now partnerships. I think we're over 25, which is pretty neat for our smaller community. Next slide. Baseline data, much like we just saw down in Florida, we're looking at not the best 3rd grade reading level, but this is from the 2021-22. We did get the new SOL data. It did jump up to 54%. So that was a small win that we're very proud of, and great to sort of see some progress moving with a really supportive community and education system. Next slide. Mostly this is pretty standard with regards to the campaign. Increase the kindergarten readiness, the 3rd grade reading, out of school time, and chronic absenteeism. So our 3 buckets that we're working on. Next slide. Like I said, we're growing list of partners. Here's we have everybody, for-profits, nonprofits, the library, the airport, doctor's offices, Starbase, the book galleries, so many people that are coming together to sort of say, hey, we want to help take those community roadblocks out so that our kids can get to learning to read on time and be great by 3rd grade. Just showing the wide range of people we have on our team, and it's ever growing. The public schools are our sort of cornerstone partner. They have been supportive from the beginning and sort of taking the approach that we are not sort of saying, no, you guys aren't doing a good job. We're saying, hey, we want to take some of those roadblocks away so you guys can do even better. Next slide. Monitoring and evaluation has been huge for us and sort of helping us drive where in the community we want to take our stuff, our projects, our activities, things like that. So we're tracking that in real time on our websites, both the Wyatt Foundation and the Literacy Volunteers website. So you'll be able to see sort of where everything is at any snapshot for any community member. Next slide. We're just going to skip that one. We'll ignore that. That's just sort of our internal one. But here's what we're looking at, our value to the community. So aligning on target, sort of all coordinating together, which I think sort of this comes together. We've seen going out in the community, getting things done. We need the community to buy in to really make this happen. So a lot that we've done, we're about 1 year into the campaign. So we're still pretty new to it. We're getting our marketing message out, but we are pulling some really neat sort of events together and things like that. So next slide, please. So this is sort of where we see reading by 3rd grade. So we're looking at all these activities and community-based programs to help us jump into getting kids ready for 3rd grade. So the little library box system, we've now built 13 of those throughout the community, and every park, every neighborhood has one with access to free books for adults and kids. We're doing Ready for K, Ready Rosie, home visit programs through the schools and Healthy Families. The Story Walk program. So now we have interactive, both outside the home in parks, at the library, a couple different walks that we're doing where families can go, get sort of integration, talk, see some tips and tricks, but then kids sort of get to have some fun while learning to read as well. And we're doing parent education classes. So this is our triple stack flyer. This is sort of our system that we're taking anywhere and everywhere. So Ready for K, mobile texting to the parents. Dolly Parton's Imagination Library. We've now capped over 2,100 kids, which has been really great. And Ready Rosie with weekly emails and videos. So sort of our triple stack so that everyone in our community knows about it, can learn about it, can get involved and engaged. Next slide. Oh, sorry. Could we go back one? And then I'll be done. There we go. So what we're working on, which is showing sort of in the community, get the word out. Dolly, as you can see over my shoulder, she comes to all of our events. She pops up around town everywhere. The little library is down there. We have yard signs, billboards, really working pretty hard to get the word out in the community because we're working on ways to get kids engaged, excited. One that's still on here, we did an attendance thing with the Kona ice truck, that if kids had good attendance, they could go find the Kona ice truck wherever they were in the community and get a free icy, things like that. So working pretty hard to sort of gear up, ramp up, get the word out, get the community engaged and involved.
Okay. Thank you, Andy. Brilliant. Okay, Liza, I think you're up next. Yes, you are.
How are you? I'm Liza Khan. I'm the Children's Services Council of Broward County, and our campaign for grade level reading is called Broward Reads, and I'm just going to tell you about a few learning rich environments that we have here in Broward. Next slide, please. So first of all, obviously all of you know learning happens everywhere. So even if it's little things, they add up to big impact. Next slide. Oops. So our libraries are very involved and are a critical partner in our Broward Reads campaign. And all our libraries around Broward County have signs with tips parents can use to help their children learn. And one example of this is Babies Need Words Every Day, Talk, Read, Sing, and Play. And these are shareable resources that were designed to bridge the 30 million word gap by providing parents proven ways to build their children's literacy skills. So these include 8 visually appealing posters that deliver effective rhymes, games, and other suggestions that parents can communicate with their babies. Next slide, please. So here's the examples of the posters. I know it's hard to see, but these free posters are available in English and Spanish, and they're great to post above changing tables, childcare centers, doctors' waiting rooms, anywhere that families and children can be. And they also provide a book list that suggests some books that parents could request at their local libraries. And all our librarians encourage their community partners to download these and display these free printable resources, which is a great, easy way to get started with getting that signage around your community. Next slide, please. So continuing with our libraries, at our Florida Maine branch, they have an active learning center, which is a free, educationally rich children's play space for appropriate play activities to promote school readiness for children birth to 5. And you can see in some of the pictures, there's a play kitchen, there's a playhouse. In the back, there, in the little blue thing, there's like an ocean. So they can just really like cook and clean in the playhouse, really just explore in a model village to figure out flexible strategies for creative play when they're interacting. And the parents and their caregivers can ask open-ended questions and really lead to that imagination and understanding. And our library also will do training for our childcare providers so they can implement everyday learning in their environment. Next slide, please. So I know Andy touched on the story walks, but during COVID, like everyone else, we had to pivot to get creative with learning that could take place outdoors. And that's kind of where Broward went with our story walks. So story trails or story walks are just outdoor exhibits with storybook displayed along a path, and families can read the book as they take a walk or visit the park. Next slide. So these are some examples just of things around Broward. So in Tamarack, you can kind of see in the first picture, they built in these little desks almost where they can change out the different pages of the storybook as you go along. The second picture is at one of our library trails. And actually at the end of this trail, there's a little sign that says they can come into the library to get a prize for finishing the story walk. And then the last picture shows actually our Read for the Record in 2020, which is very big down here in Broward County that we have in October every year. This was our first really big opportunity during COVID to try to do a story walk. And this is kind of where it all started, because Broward Read for the Record is really huge. And we have 40,000 volunteers going into classrooms, but we had to pivot to virtual, but we also added these. And you can kind of see in the background as you go along the trail, there's just different pages of the book that the kids could read. Next slide, please. So also this goes to our Learning Rich Playground. So this is a bigger investment clearly, but this is in Sunrise. It's at Willoughby Park, and they created a safety town where it was almost like a mini city where the children could learn about like what's in a city, like a grocery store or a city hall, and just more different STEM activities than just the typical slides. Obviously, there's like lots of fun, engaging thing, which bringing a city on board, that's a big, costly implementation, but I encourage everybody to get their cities involved in their campaign, because that's where you can kind of go with that. Next slide. So just to sum up really fast, I just feel like the big takeaway from our session today is no matter how small your implementation is, it has impacts on your community. So even if you feel like it's a baby step, like just printing the posters that are free online that you can find, you have to take that first step to move forward to make big changes. So thank you so much.
Thanks, Liza. And I do love the Safety Town. It really is. Oh, it's almost like a children's museum without walls. Very, very fascinating. Okay. All right. Next we have Kate Knutson. Kate, you're on.
Thank you. We're very excited to share our Omaha Urban Thinkscapes project at Metro Omaha Raise Me to Read. Our logo here imagines a sunny day in Omaha, the bright colors that children will choose from a crayon box, and the inset is architecture in East Omaha, which is our target area. Next slide, please. Our vision is to create playful public spaces that improve the health, well-being, and development of babies and children and their families. Our goals here are to create a playful sense of place, to engage children and families with playful learning experiences, and increase the development of Omaha children and residents. Next slide, Siobhan. Our founding collaboration included urban core initiatives at the Greater Omaha Chamber of Commerce, the University of Nebraska-Omaha College of Education, Health and Human Sciences, and Metro Omaha Raise Me to Read. An important tenet of the development of this project is an intentional focus on community engagement. We have engaged families and children and developed an impressive cross-section of entities and individuals who support this project. We received initial funding from the University of Nebraska-Omaha through a strategic investment grant for social justice, inequality, race, and class. Next slide. As you can see from this image, we've developed relationships with artists, elected and appointed officials, advocates for playful learning, STEM, mental health and natural resources, project and landscape designers, community planners and resource conservationists, and museum, research, and educational leaders. Next slide. Thanks. Family playdates, where we asked, how do you play, were held at the Learning Community Centers of Douglas and Sarpy County. We saw how deeply parents understand the needs of their children and how important safe, beautiful, and creative spaces are to the over 100 children and 60 families who participated in our playdates. Next slide. Now, after several years of community engagement, research, and development, we are proud to announce that we are partners in a project to reimagine a space called Plaza de la Raza, seen here in these RDG design renderings. Next slide. That's just another version from a different angle. And next slide. As portrayed in, back one. Thanks. As portrayed in these two examples, in addition to learning embedded play space at this site, what we imagine is in-ground markers placed throughout the plaza, noting learning opportunities, and QR code signage that can rotate in and out for more information about activities that are happening there or specific spaces within the plaza. A focus on the arc of early learning to workforce development is planned. Next slide. In another area of Omaha, we recently held a design charrette with trusted community artists who imagined what could be possible on two sites. They hoped for multi-generational community voice and design, an ever-growing art installation with historical perspectives, a greenhouse focused on the migration of food and plants to Nebraska, also a skate ribbon, stage, swings, and other gathering spaces. But they continue to return to the idea of the culture of art and history in their neighborhoods, and as they called it, ownership with a block party vibe. Next slide. Our next steps for Omaha Urban Thinkscapes include paying attention to ARPA funding. I testified at the Nebraska legislature in support of Plaza de la Raza, and our team penned letters of support for funding, noting the playful cradle to career focus. A second application will be opened any day. We need to garner city permission for the development of a second site. Once design models are completed for each site, the idea will be pitched to potential funders. We will complete our Play Ecosystem Suite, a toolkit for replication of playful learning projects, small and large, throughout the community. Researchers on our team will develop protocols for measuring the effect of such spaces. We are also interested in the Playful Learning Landscapes Metrics Framework and certification with PLAN. Playdates at the Learning Community Centers will continue, as will design and charrette meetings. Next slide. In reading an article in Smithsonian Magazine about the World War I Memorial, I found a description of that work to be very close to ours. The artist Sabin Howard said, "Art is not something separate from history or humanity or memory or society. It is the tangle of those things, the interrelatedness of those things, the harnessing of the collision of those things in process, and in breathing life into one new thing." Next slide. So I hope you understand our one new thing and how the interrelatedness of early learning, parent-child interaction, and urban design and development will harness out of school time, elevate the importance of parents in the learning lives of their children, create a community conversation about early literacy, and enhance the engagement necessary to create school and life success for all our children and families. Last slide is thank you.
Thank you, Kate. Terrific, ambitious, I have to say. All right, let's move on to Rachel Stein of Book Harvest.
Hi, everyone. It's so great to be with you and to continue this conversation about learning-rich environments. I'm Rachel Stein. I'm the Director of Book Abundance at Book Harvest. Next slide, please. And Book Harvest, we're really working hard to create an early literacy system of care to support children from birth all the way to age 10 with an abundance of books, and for their parents with ongoing literacy support. And we really believe that doing these things will help us to create a culture of literacy within every community. Book Harvest has existed for 12 years, and within that time, we have provided over 2 million books to children and families in North Carolina. Next slide. So when thinking about creating learning-rich environments in everyday places, and as you can hear from the other presenters, there's really 3 things that Book Harvest keeps in mind: location, partnerships, and home literacy environments. So with location, as some of the other presenters have already touched upon, we want to think about, well, where do families that have young children already spend their time? We know that time is a precious commodity, and so we want to meet families where they already are. And then we want to create and develop really innovative partnerships to build those learning-rich environments. And then also think about how we can extend the learning from the community space into the home, because we know children spend most of their time at home. So how do we do that? Next slide. I'm going to give you a few examples of how Book Harvest has done that. The first one is our family space. So one, our location. This is located at our Book Harvest office. And when we had the opportunity to do a redesign, we realized we need to make this a place where families feel welcomed, where they can interact with their children, and where they can play and have fun together. Next slide. So in this space, we have books that families can take home to continue to build their home libraries, blocks where kids can build things, they can measure things. We have a gigantic ruler, and we also have a magnet wall. So lots of different things in the space to help spur on that learning and to create those really fun interactions between children and also between children and their caregivers. Next slide. And then also thinking about another location where families spend a lot of time, and that's the laundromat. A family who uses a laundromat will spend 2 to 3 hours a week in this space. And what a great opportunity to make sure that this can be full of learning opportunities. Next slide. So in designing the community space, it's really important to think about furniture that fits kids so that they feel comfortable and can do activities. And also thinking through to what could you have in the space that they can do. So of course we have books because we're Book Harvest. And of course, children and families can take those books to, again, to help continue to build their own home library. But we also have things like Play-Doh and other activities, story times, magnet letters, and other things that they can, puzzles and other things that they can engage in while they are at the laundromat. Next slide. Then in thinking about different partnerships, we have installed over 25 book boxes in Durham, which is our flagship community in North Carolina. And to do this, we've had to create partnerships in thinking through, well, where are families already going? So childcare centers, a lot of childcare centers are also promoting the literacy. And so this is a great partnership.
I don't know what just happened.
Rachel, you muted yourself.
Oh, thank you for telling me. We also have, Siobhan, yeah, you can stick there at the story walk. So the other example I wanted to share is our story walk. So our story walk, we just installed this story walk last week. And for the ribbon cutting, we had just a great example of partnerships coming together. So we had the funder. We had a summer camp that was participating at our Durham Parks and Rec Center. And so this was also a partnership with our Park and Recreational Center. And also we had a partnership with a construction company to install the story walk. And in order to extend the learning into home, every child that came got a copy of the book that is at the story walk. So next slide. So I just want to leave you and invite you, as you're thinking about doing some different things in your community, to consider the location, the partnerships, and then how are you also helping to increase the home literacy environment. Thanks so much.
Okay, thank you, Rachel. And now we'll bring up Cheryl and Kate. And I know, Cheryl and Kate, I'm not going to be fair to you, but I want to give us some time to go into discussions, but let's get you up and have you get going, okay?
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay. You can go on to the first slide.
Okay. You're on.
So Read to Succeed is just United Way of Central Iowa's integrated initiative that talks about all of our early learning strategies. We use this as just kind of a catch-all for multiple strategies that we have that we're going to talk about today. You can go ahead. The first one I'm going to talk about is something that those of you that are familiar with the campaign might have heard of, Write by Text. So Write by Text is something that is a texting initiative, and it continues to work toward addressing inequities by reaching out to underserved parents and caregivers. We use it in a 3-county area. We actually have it available statewide through United Way of Central Iowa. The whole state can use it. It's intentional marketing and recruitment to support of the goal of reaching individuals and families at or below 250% of federal poverty level. Write by Text is specifically designed to support vulnerable families by providing them with evidence-based resources and community messages sent to their specific zip codes. So there's an element that you can customize and send based on where your participants are. Go on to the next slide. You can go ahead. I kind of talked through that one, sorry. So with the Central Iowa teams with other trusted messengers, and you can see some of those in Polk, Warren, and Dallas counties, our 3 counties, to engage caregivers who are either newly pregnant, parenting, or teaching young children. So it can be parents, caregivers, anything like that. Go ahead. We also connect with pediatricians, health professionals, human service organizations, libraries, church groups, extension offices, childcare providers, early childhood educators, and school districts to help build relationships with community partners and awareness for families about what opportunities are out there. So we can have things like professional development opportunities, summer meal sites, grocery stores, kindergarten roundups. All of these are places that we would hope to circulate this information and encourage families to enroll in Bright by Text. So we have a lot of outreach and a lot of push to get families just to enroll. And once they do, they're very happy with the outcome. So you can go ahead. And there's a new part of Bright by Text that's just launching, and we were happy to be one of the early adopters. It's called Bond. And this is really more around the mental health component of new parents and babies. So this is free resource specifically designed for caregivers of a child from birth to age 1. So this is a 6-month curriculum delivered by 1 message a week and is available in both English and Spanish. You can go to the next one. So the topics include things like signs of depression and anxiety, information on children's mental health, infant mental health, tips for bonding with the baby, notes of encouragement. So normalizing, the needs of the baby or the needs of new parents, how to handle separation, self-care, importance of that. And then other connections to resources within the community, mental health hotlines, crisis, substance abuse, and then information about healthcare coverage for mental health care. So the messages were created in collaboration with expert organizations, some national ones that you might recognize. I won't go through them all, but just trust that it is nationally recognized. You can go on. And then a new, because United Way, we're all about give, advocate, volunteer. We have a new volunteer opportunity that we're launching this fall with our Day of Action, and we're creating Bond with Baby Bags. So we have stadium approved clear bags with snack cups, spill-proof cups, all those things that parents they're often sold out and hard to get, as well as a board book and some simple steps to reading in early childhood with your children. So next. And that is an example of the simple steps to early literacy that will go in all the Bond bags. And so these will be placed in, additionally, we will have these stickers available, wider variety besides in the bag. So we're really excited about that. We're anxious to launch it. It'll be a pilot this summer, and then hopefully something that goes forward. And that, I'm going to turn it over to Cheryl.
Okay, so unfortunately, we have 5 minutes left.
That we're going to talk about is Sarge's Westside Boxing for Success. Coach Sarge was with the police department from 1981 to 2017. And oops, are you hearing me?
Yes.
I bet you can hear me now.
We can hear you, Cheryl.
Okay, could you hear my introduction?
Yes.
Okay, awesome.
Cheryl, I'm going to have to, have you close out. I can only give you for about another minute, because we're actually going to be closing out the session shortly. Okay.
Okay. And just very quickly, Sarge Westside Boxing, go ahead and go next. He then, again, this is what's really key for him, is that he commits this youth boxing program for a variety of reasons: to reduce the number of school days that students miss. They need to show an improvement in reading, in their school academics and also student behaviors, and they identify at-risk students and get them community resources. Our last slide for this section is what's really critical. And what is very important is Sarge's Westside Boxing is not only boxing, but it's also very specifically tied in to students' academic behavior. And what is key about all of this is that waivers are signed by parents and guardians for each student, and so that they're not only their coaches, but also their certified teachers who work with their kids are in collaboration with the schools, and they use that to guide not only their academic, but their behavior information. They use assessments, as you notice, to actually specifically target and offer supports and extensions for kids in need. And what's really key about all of this as well is that what's important is that if kids cannot pay, families cannot pay their monthly fee, that's not a problem, because then what happens is,
Brings me flowers.
Keep going,
then,
Cheryl.
okay, then what's able to happen is that they simply offer service. They help, they take care of the club, they volunteer for the club, and that's their way to actually feel a part of the club as well. Back to you, Siobhan.
Great, thank you. So we have a minute. So Lisa, I'm actually going to have you pick a question that you want to focus on with the panel before we close out in literally 3 minutes. If you have,
Sure.
everybody should
Do we have time for Menti, or are we going to
Yes,
pass?
we're going to do one. I think we're going to do one Menti. You just tell me which of the questions you want me to do. So for everybody to go on, I sent a message saying, go on to www.menti.com. And when you go in, you should see a box at the top. And Lisa, you tell me what discussion piece you want to do. You want to do.
Let's do number 3, which is where do families with young children spend their days? Think daily, weekly, monthly, and yearly.
Okay. All right. This is the one, right?
Where in your communities? Yes.
Okay. All right. So everybody, this is going to be, I want you to go on Menti and enter this code 530600142, and you'll be participating in a word cloud. And then what the panel will do is just comment on the words that will be coming up as they, and well, the panel could probably begin talking as the I need to set the and I'm going to start it now so everybody can keep going.
Great. So part of this is, of course, for us to think about not just where we have everyday places and spaces, learning opportunities in place, but where also this might grow. And I love the fact that I heard a lot about walking trails and some other common areas. As I see now, there's bowling alleys, skating rinks, Walmart. How can we turn these into learning rich opportunities? And let's see if the panel has more to state about how this movement can become even more enriched and more embedded across our communities.
Okay, that was not enough time. I'm noting in my head the next time that we do this, but I just want to throw appreciation to everybody who was a part of that conversation and the 3 conversations actually that happened around digital connectivity, learning rich environments, and attendance in kindergarten. We've got just a few minutes left to do some reflections, and so I just want to open it up for Hetty, Cecilia, Siobhan, Anika to say anything that happened in your room. Something that I will note from our room is the importance of partnerships with finding out information about ACP.
How many?
So Siobhan or Hetty, any quick summary for you?
Siobhan, do you want me to take this? Because I know I was taking some notes.
And I'm turning to Anika, so she has a heads up.
Yes, I can.
Yes, Lisa.
Okay, well, I was so impressed with the collaborative nature of how each of our panelists talked about the essential nature of collaborating with families and parents, but also with business communities and the various sectors of the communities across the networks. I also love to hear some things in common. There was some story walks talked about multiple times, things happening in everyday places and spaces, in laundromats, in parks, in waiting rooms. And we also, it seems to be that these small library windows are being really disseminated across our areas. But a lot about parent engagement, and a lot about starting early and both doing big events, mid-size events, and then very small intimate events. It was very inspirational.
Great, thanks, Lisa. Room 3, attendance. Any key takeaways in the last remaining minutes here?
So we had a very rich conversation, and we talked a lot about, what happened when schools reopened, and there were gaps in communications, lots of disruptions, constant changes. And our folks from Avondale and Patterson talked about relationships matter. So really highlighting that, finding ways to welcome students as they come through the door, doing trunk or treat activities, kindergarten roundups with families before they start the school year, and really putting an emphasis on building relationships with families. There was also lots of conversations about focusing on tier 2 and tier 3 strategies and interventions. And I would say most importantly, moving away from this compliance piece, that when it comes to attendance, and really trying to meet families where they are, again, through family engagement, working with communities. One of my favorites, as always, is talking about the walking school bus. And while there's lots of transportation issues everywhere for students all over the country, sometimes to get to school, it's working again with families and communities to do something like a walking school bus to get students present. So while we did talk about, again, some of the challenges that happened with the pandemic, we shared a lot of solutions and what a lot of school districts are doing moving forward to address the chronic absenteeism that we're seeing across the country.
Great, thank you so much. So I see that we have 1 minute left, and I just want to, again, throw love to everybody in this room who added voice, your presence here today in the breakout rooms, in the conversations, and also to all of our speakers and panelists who really shared what was going on in their community. I want to also let everyone know that all of the information from every single breakout room will be made available in the follow-up resources, so that you don't feel like you've missed anything if you were only able to attend one room. And thanks again to our backup team here, to our webinar producers, to help us navigate all of these moving parts and pieces. We hope you're able to join us this afternoon for our final GLR week session, which I believe Sarah has put into the chat. And with that, I hope you have a lovely rest of your day. Thank you so